Hello everyone, and welcome to a little midnight chat about game mastering, my bread and butter, which is actually also going to spoil some of you on the magic, but whatever. But before we begin, let me go through the event list here. So, let's see. We have Jewish Aurorian with a Tier 1 resubscription. Thank you so much for that. You also gifted a sub to Darewolf Gaming. Very nice, very nice. Love to see it. Let's see. Also, Bubba Lubber, hello there. Hello. And yeah, just a few disclaimers before we start the talk proper. This is, I think, is going to go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. If you at all want to preserve the mystery of how I GM, or if you want to, shall we say, I don't want to say not enjoy my streams, because you're going to enjoy my streams regardless, but let's just say it's kind of like asking a magician how they did a trick. It's going to have a different feel after this talk, so if you're at all worried about that sort of thing, maybe dip out, and I wouldn't blame you. But, should you wish to continue, I will be going over a lot of helpful hints for game masters, both current, prospective, basically tips and tricks I think a lot of GMs could use. And I'm going to be doing my best to not be doing the, shall we say, obvious ones that a lot of other game masters who are far more eloquent than I am have covered already. So I'll try to be a little bit different and original here. So first things first, we need to talk about, I guess we'll start with how to set up a game. And that might seem maybe obvious, but a lot of what I'm going to say is going to follow from the process of setting up the game. So first things first, this advice is mostly going to be for the online portion of gaming. Now, if you've got in real life gaming or you've got in real life friends, this will be a little bit different. Hey, Mr. Redwing 1994, thank you for the resubscription with Prime. Thank you. So, I'll start with the in real life thing. Obviously, if you're in real life, you probably have a local game store, or you have friends, or you have somebody that you can just go to a house or go to a game store, sit down and play. And that's perfectly fine. Like, some people actually prefer and will not touch online gaming at all. Understandable. You know, some people just don't like the online thing. I get it. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot to be said for the online gaming, especially game mastering online. So, again, this advice is mostly going to be for online GMing, but if you can get any nugget and use it in real life GMing, hey, even better. So, let's address recruiting and setting up an online game. So, an online game is obviously a lot different than an in real life one, because you can't physically interact with your players, at least from the game mastering side. There is no, what's the right word, social expectation with online gaming. And the reason I put it that way is because I've been doing this online gaming thing for, well, close to 7 years now. And what I can say is that at the end of the day, someone can swear up and down that they'll be somewhere. They can swear on their mother's grave, doesn't matter what they swear on, and they'll flake. There is no rhyme or reason. People will flake in an online game, especially if you're just starting out. So, first advice is you need to figure out how to weed out flakes. And you might be asking, well, ELH, how do I weed out flakes? Well, there's a few ways you can go about it. The first, and probably the thing I like the most, is actually doing an online application. Now, I know there's going to be some of you that are going to be like, ugh, online applications, why would anyone fill them out? Or why would I make someone go through that sort of things? Honestly, it's going to suck if people apply and they don't get a call back. But imagine they're applying for a job. You basically have job applications that you can only have 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the number is. You can only have so many players at your table. And you want to make sure that the people you recruit are ones you will enjoy spending time with, because the worst thing you can do as a game master, or at least one of the worst things you can do, is sit at a table with someone you hate, or put up with someone because you let them into the game, you didn't vet them properly. It's going to make you hate the game, it's going to make the other players hate the game, something that you need to sort of do. And yeah, Bubble Lubber is completely correct in that you will also weed out that guys by doing online applications. So let's delve into that a little bit here. Now, when I say online applications, I'm not like asking you to, go into depth. And I'm actually about to touch on that, Darewolf. You don't need to go into depth. You don't need to know their socials. You don't need to know their life story. All you really need to know are a few simple facts about the person. First of all, you need to know their OOC name, their out-of-character name. Simple step, but believe it or not, I've had people give me racial slurs as out-of-character names. I've had people give me unpronounceable names. I don't mean that in like a, oh, ELH doesn't want to try doing a name. I mean legitimately that is not in any language whatsoever kind of a thing. So an online name, like an out-of-character name, can tell you a lot about a person. You know, what do they value? Exactly, Bubble Lubber. It was in that order. So you need to know their out-of-character name. Second thing you need is you need a way to contact them. Now, I do Discord, but maybe you do Slack. Maybe you do email. Maybe you do Roll20 messaging. Whatever you're doing, you need to have a way to contact them. And believe it or not, a lot of people have filtered themselves because, oh, hey, hello, Jude. Hello, welcome, Raiders. Thank you, Jude Cryobite, for the raid. Hello. We're just doing a cozy little chat about game mastering today. And welcome, Raiders. Please feel free, put up your feet, sit back, enjoy. But yeah, Jude, what were you playing as I give you a shout out here? Let's see. 2, 3. I can type today. Let's see. You were playing Phantasy Star Online 2. Good game. Good choice. I'm assuming the expansion? You were playing Tales of Berseria. Another solid game. Love Velvet. Velvet is amazing. Gotcha. Well, thank you for dropping by. Thank you for the raid. Where was I? Oh, right. So, the reasoning is, the reason you want to make sure you have a way to contact them, it seems like a really obvious step, but it's one of the most important ones because, as I was saying, it's one of those things where the player will go in and they'll put in names that, again, won't make sense or they won't translate or something will go wrong, and they will filter themselves because they didn't read directions. And believe it or not, reading directions is actually a very crucial skill for any player to have. Because if they can't spend the time, shall we say, if they can't spend the time reading your application for your D&D game or your Star Trek game, whatever you're GMing, if they can't take the time to read properly and follow directions, chances are they're probably not going to do the same for when you're actually playing. So, again, your mileage will vary, but if you can't contact the person, they kind of weed themselves out. So, you want to put an important, disclaimer on this, hey, make sure this is correct, or I can't contact you, and your application is useless. So, the other thing you need to do, and this is where the advice is going to differ for each individual person. What I like to do is I like to sort of ask, what is your experience with role-playing? And the first question I ask is, exactly, it's amazing how many people can't follow simple directions. And it is a very clean line between DM and players. It's a very useful tool. Thinking about running a Fallout game at your local game store? I encourage it. I definitely encourage it. Don't know if you knew this already, but Fallout is, if you've already pre-ordered, it's shipping July 16th, so end of July, you should have a physical copy, but my guess is also by the end of July, it will be in the physical stores as well. So if you're waiting for not having to pay $30, $40 in shipping, probably end of July, beginning of August. But yeah, so what I like to do for my applications is I like to ask about their role-playing experience. I ask them about the system that we're going to be playing. So if I'm obviously running Dungeons and Dragons, I ask, "Hey, what's your experience with Dungeons and Dragons?" Doesn't have to be 5th edition, just in general. What is your experience with Dungeons and Dragons? And actually, keep beating me to my point, Darewolf. I love it. What I'm looking for there is I'm not looking for someone to impress me. And in fact, it's the people that try to impress you that you should be on the lookout for, because they be a little bit wary. I say that because knowing a person's experience level sort of gives you an insight in the type of game they want to play. So for example, not going to name any names, but in my most recent and still recruiting, by the way, Chromatic Crusaders game, which I guess I'll plug real quick. Chromatic Crusaders is going to be a Saturday 8 a.m. game, meaning it's going to be your classic Saturday morning cartoon time slot. And that is going to be an all-evil, all-Tiamat worshipping campaign of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I have been very negative towards D&D 5th edition in the past. If you know me, I generally don't like doing it, but let's just say I'm making an exception here, and this exception is going to determine whether or not I give up D&D for good. But on a positive note, it could turn around and turn into a full series. Right now, it's just going to be a mini campaign, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, what I was looking for in this question and getting this one app in particular, I think it was like 2 or 3 applications did this. And what they did is they listed out a bunch of games that I had never heard of before. So I was like, okay, I've never heard of this. What was this system like? And when I looked it up, how do I put this? If any of you know what Fatal is, yeah, they were kind of in the same line as Fatal. If you don't know what Fatal is, don't look it up. I'm dead serious. Don't look it up. No, don't look up Fatal. Don't do it. No. So that's one thing. The other thing, that actually on a positive note, there you go. I got Donovan to chat. Hey there. I warned you. Oh, yeah, you're going to have to live with that now, knowing what Fatal is. Oh, my lord. On a positive note, though, because again, this was an evil game I'm recruiting for. One person actually listed out that I think they said something along the lines of, hey, I actually have like 10 years of game mastering experience, but since you're playing an evil campaign, here's what I have in that arena. So they listed out things like the World of Darkness. Hi, Aaliyah. Welcome. Oh my god, Circumference. Nope, not gonna get into it. Not gonna get it. Oh, again, don't look up Fatal. It will ruin your life. Just don't do it. But this person in particular actually listed out games where you play sort of an evil character. So like Vampire the Masquerade, like Shadow of the Demon Lord, like, was it Pendragon? I don't think it was Pendragon. There were some examples of Exalted. There were a bunch of different examples they gave. But what that let me do is that let me see, oh yeah, they've played a lot of systems. They kind of know what they're doing. They deliberately tailored the answer so that it was relevant to what I wanted to know out of the question. And really, and this is kind of advice for people looking outside of 5th edition. You're going to find that if you ask for system-specific experience, most of the time you're not going to get any, because a lot of people are looking to try non-D&D systems, but they're not going to have the practical experience to go with it. And that's perfectly fine. I actually make it a point to bring in newbies every once in a while. But maybe for you, maybe that's a deal breaker. And if it is, hey, it's your game. I can't tell you how to run your game. But what I will say, it is still a useful tool, that question. So that's 3 things. The 4th thing, as my voice cracks, because apparently that's what it does, the 4th thing is you want them to give you a very... Oh god, Tyburn Actual, we warned you. I feel like I should just put a disclaimer on screen somehow in the VOD. Be like, don't look it up. Oh, God. All right, so fourth thing, before I totally lose my train of thought. Fourth thing you want to ask on an application is get the player to give a very basic idea for their character or something along those same lines. Hey, Ms. Roy. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully I said that right. I feel like we've talked about this before. Hopefully I said that right. If not, correct me again, and I will make an effort to write a bigger note this time. But yeah, so you want to have the player in question sort of give a basic detail of the character they're wanting to play. And you want to have them limited to not more than a paragraph. Hell, even a single sentence is fine. And you do that because you want to get a player that is already thinking about how they're going to come into your game. Now, you still might do session 0, you still might do collaborative character building, but it's one of those things where if the player doesn't have an idea of the character they want to play coming into the system, it sometimes makes it hard to sort of figure out, well, okay, X is playing this, Y is playing this, so what is this new person going to play? And it makes recruiting a little bit harder, and it also shows who's willing to put in that little extra thought into the game they're applying for. And honestly, it's been a very good indicator for me in my experience whether or not they either A, understand the system, or B, understand the type of campaign that they're applying to. Again, using the evil campaign that I'm recruiting for as an example, I had one person tell me that they wanted to play a 16-year-old human male, which was fine. You know what? If this was a standard D&D game, I don't mind, younger players. I don't mind younger teenagers. But specifically for this game, the evil campaign, I made it very clear that this was an 18-plus game because it's an evil campaign and I don't want to deal with underage nonsense. And it was also an all-Dragonborn campaign, so, as you're probably guessing, the person filtered themselves immediately because of that remark. The other thing, on a more positive note, I had somebody give me an answer of, okay, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be playing as a Dragonborn, but here's the type of feel for the character I want to play. And I don't want to go into full detail here because I'm still going through applications, but they basically gave me an overview of what they thought an evil character was like and how they would play an evil character. And for that type of game, that's needed because you need to be able to weed out just the murder hobos. You need to be able to weed out the lull random players, if that makes any sense. So it's one of those things where getting the player in a player application to say, okay, this is the type of character I'm thinking of, can help tremendously. Then the fifth question, and this is the end of the player application thing. The fifth question is you actually just want to kind of leave a thing that says, hey, that's the end of the application. Is there anything else I should know about you, your application, etc., etc.? I use that space to get people to give me pronouns. I use that space to let me know if they're VTubers in a positive way. It's not like I'm weeding these people out, but it's one of those things where sometimes people will give you an essay on, hey, I couldn't say this in my application, but this is what I'm thinking about the game. This is more or less what I'd like to play. It sort of gives the player an opportunity to give their application additional life. And I would be lying if I said that when I see someone say, oh, I have no further things to add, and the rest of their application is very bare bones, let's just say it doesn't inspire any confidence in me wanting to interview them further because, I don't have anything to go on. They didn't give me anything to go on. So it's like, well, sorry, you kind of, spent the time doing this application and you didn't give me anything to go off of. So sorry. Yeah, it's not great. How are you going to exploit the masses and convert them in worshiping Tiamat if they're dead? Well, it's called necromancy, and Tiamat's okay with that, so have at it. All right, we'll see you in a bit, Gray Matter. Thank you for stopping by, at least for this little bit. But yeah, so that's my first big chunk of advice is if you're doing an online game, do a player application through Google Forms. I don't know, Bubble Lover. I think you can necromancy everyone. That sounds like quitter talk. I think you just need to try harder. If you can't necromancy them, you're not doing it hard enough. Yeah. I'm not going to go further than that. Darewolf put it best. It sounds like a challenge. It really does. So that's the first big advice, is in setting up the game, do player applications if at all applicable. The next thing you want to do is be very, very firm in day and time. Again, this might seem a no-brainer, but 9 times out of 10, the number one killer of a D&D game, of a tabletop role-playing game, is going to be scheduling. And scheduling is one of those things where it's hard to explain how to do it well. It's one of those things that you sort of have to learn by doing. It's not something that I can just dictate to you, but I can try to at least explain a little bit here. By setting a specific day and time and not just a flexible, oh, we have Saturday evenings open, so whenever people roll in, we can play. That works for an in-real-life game. That works for a local game store game where you can just drop in and out of play at your leisure. What it matters for an online game in particular is you want to make sure it's both a time slot that works for you as a game master and for the players that you want to have. And maybe you make that a question on your application, like, hey, are you able to make this time? Or, hey, which of these times is good for you? Because if you can't consistently make the session, whether it's you having to cancel, if it's players having to cancel, if you are not consistently running the game, and this has happened to me to 4 games to me this week, which is why I didn't stream on Wednesday, because I was not having a fun day. It was one of those things where if you don't play for a month, if you don't play for a month and a half, like if you don't play a game consistently and you take long, unexpected breaks, chances are your game's dead in the water. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up on a regular schedule, or as regular as you can. As Darewolf says, it's all about momentum. You can be going strong for 10, 20 sessions, and then if you break for a month unexpectedly, or if you literally can't get but 2 players at the table out of 5 people, your momentum's gone. And once it's lost, it's not quite lost forever, but it is something extremely hard to get back. It's one of those things where it happens a lot in summer, and it's kind of why I'm not super broken up about it, about most of my games kind of falling by the wayside. But it's one of those things where the summer is a bad time for games, holidays are a bad time for games, around Thanksgiving, Christmas. But the key deciding factor is, are you meeting on a regular basis, and are you being consistent about it? So that may require you to have a conversation with someone for an online game and be like, hey, you're not being consistent, you're not showing up, you're a lot of canceling at the last minute, are you really interested in the game, etc., etc. As Jewish Aurorian has just said, it is extremely hard as a game master to plan something with the intent of having a player there, and then that player doesn't show, and if it's an A plot or a B plot and that person isn't there, you have to generate a new plot on the fly, or you have to come up with something very quickly to make the gap different. Now, I know I'll get to that in a moment, Darewolf. I know there's sort of a theory of thought that you shouldn't be writing for specific characters, but I'll get to that in a little bit when I talk about planning a campaign. But it's definitely one of those things where, to some extent, you should be planning for your players and their player characters, but we'll get to that in a moment. But maybe we can use this as a launching point into Darewolf's question about conversations with the players outside of the game. So, in my book, I think there should be a common space where, even if you're having a real-life game, like in real-life games, it takes 5 seconds to spin up a Discord server and have everybody join it. And having that way to talk to everybody in an immediate fashion, having ways to ping people, having ways to talk about, hey, I thought this would be really cool if we did this, or hey, I have a question about this, or hey, I'm going to be late. Having a common space where you can sort of keep all that in one place extremely, extremely valuable, extremely, extremely important. And it's one of those things where the more avenues you have for a player to reach you, the more avenues you have for players to give you feedback, the better. And that'll be a point later on as well. But let's actually start to move on past scheduling and past assembling the game to actually planning the game. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to start this. Let's actually start with the session 0. Now again, some people think session 0 is useless, that, hey, I know these people, I don't need to have a session 0, or, hey, I'm just doing a pickup game, I'm doing a one-shot, session 0 is not really needed. I mean, they're not wrong, but they're also not right, is what I would say on that. The reason for that is because even if your session 0, quote-unquote, is nothing more than a 10-minute or 5-minute conversation before the game starts that says, hey, I want to cover X, Y, Z in this game. Does anybody have a problem with X, Y, or Z? Let me know now before we get into the moment and this disturbs somebody. Or this is something somebody wants to avoid. And that will prevent, say, 20 sessions in, you doing something that a player doesn't like. And they bring the session to a screeching halt and say, hey, no, we don't want to do that, GM, kind of a thing. I'm being vague because I don't want to use the R word here, but there are players where... how to put this? I myself will use X cards and other sort of safety tools if I am in a public space, like if I'm at a convention like Gen Con, I will use X cards, I will use safety tools, because they're needed. You don't know the people that are going to be at your table at a convention. You need that sort of thing. Online game, a little bit different. Online game, you have to have a way for a player to either tell you to avoid certain subject matter, or a way to immediately tell you, hey, no, don't do that, so that you can shift gears very quickly. In real life game, again, if you know the people, you can kind of just say, hey, so-and-so, cut it out, we talked about this. But if you didn't do that session 0 that covered, well, okay, you know, what subject matters to avoid, what are our lines, what are our veils, if you don't have that conversation, you are setting yourself up for failure. I will tell that to you now. And the famous example I will use is a certain GM, ex-GM, I think now. And I'm not saying this to put him down, but there was a GM, Adam Campbell. At least I think it was Adam Campbell. You know what? Let me make sure I'm saying the right person before I go on full blast here. Adam Campbell. Yes, it is Adam Campbell. So, Adam Campbell was a good GM, for the most part. He had a very big thing going on within the streaming scene, and he, in general, was all about the safety tools. However, there was a moment where he crossed a line. I'm not talking like, oh, he made a funny haha joke. He went way over the line, and it was on stream. It was the type of thing that, had he done the session 0, or had his player been able to stop him before that event happened, and I'm not going to go into details, you can look it up if you want. It was a very bad situation, and it actually ultimately led... it was the Dungeon World writer. Yes, that's him. At the end of the day, he was canceled for that. And I don't just say that in a sarcastic, or I don't just say that in an offensive way. I don't even think he's game mastering at all anymore. I think he legitimately got dropped hard by all his sponsors. I don't think he streams anymore. It was one of those things where he went from 0 to 100, and he destroyed his career over it. But all because he didn't adhere to the Session 0 guidelines. And that's why Session 0 is so important. It may never come up, honestly. Session 0 stuff may never come up. You may never run into subject matter that you have to avoid. But it's a safety net for you, that you can just sort of go back to a Session 0 and go, hey, player Y, you're doing X. We talked about this. You shouldn't be doing X. And if they're a good player, they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, we'll shift gears. And if they're not and they continue doing X, then, yeah, you boot them, kind of a thing. But as Jewish Warrior has just said, Session 0 stuff coming up, never coming up, is the point of a Session 0. But on a more positive note about Session 0 is also to set expectations. For example, for a streamed game, what I do is I tell the players, all right, so keep in mind we are streaming. Keep in mind that an audience is watching. They may not be chatting live, but there are people on YouTube. Once you say it, it's on the internet forever. So I tell them specifically, don't do anything against TOS. Keep it PG-13. Don't go explicit. Basic. Well, what I assume are basic, but may not be basic to other people. You sort of set expectations of, okay, this is, when we will do breaks. This is when we will take a moment to breathe, or we'll all hydrate, or we'll all get up and do food. You sort of set up things like that, which, again, real life game, you just get up from the table and keep playing because you can do that, and you can eat, and you can do all those types of things because you're not chewing into a microphone, if you get where I'm going with that. So that's Session 0, where you sort of set those expectations. Again, it doesn't have to be a full Session 0, could be 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. The next thing you want to do as a GM is you want to sort of have an introductory adventure. Now, what I mean by introductory adventure is I'm not saying that you go through and you teach a long veteran of the game you're playing how to play the game. Like, for example, you don't want to throw a rat fight at a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition party if the party members are experienced. And actually, Ms. actually brings up a good point, so let me actually back up a little bit and address that. So if you do Session 0 as a character builder, as Ms. has just said, you sort of want to make sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of characters. Especially for like a Dungeons & Dragons game where having someone that can cover certain roles, like say someone good with Arcana, someone good with animal handling, someone good with religion, or if you're playing, say, Call of Cthulhu, and everybody makes the smart investigator, but nobody knows how to shoot a gun, or nobody knows how to drive. You work that out during the Session 0, where you make sure everybody comes to the table prepared, and you're not going to run into a problem where nobody can do, like, everybody's like pigeonholed to doing one thing and that they can't contribute because they overlap. For some systems, you can kind of get away with that, like Star Trek Adventures. You can basically figure out who's playing what role and they'll figure it out on their own. But yeah, for like a D&D or a Call of Cthulhu or a World of Darkness, you want to have that discussion to make sure everybody's on that same table with character creation. Now, with those characters in mind, returning to the original point, with those characters in mind, you want to develop an introductory roleplay and an introductory combat that allows the players to get a feel for their player characters. I'll use this as an example. So, for example, for the Chromatic Crusaders game, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a quick few scenes in the beginning of all the characters coming together and talking about how they have worshipped Tiamat in their lives. And it's not even going to be like a major thing. It's maybe just going to be like a 5-10 minute scene. But it gets the players talking to one another in character, which is tremendously huge, especially for a game like Dungeons & Dragons. It gets them role-playing as their character. It gets them into the mindset of the character in a way that isn't super taxing and in a way that keeps everyone involved. And keeping everyone involved is crucial in game mastering. And that's actually a common mistake I see a lot of new GMs and hell, even experienced GMs make. You need to keep in mind how much, how to put this? You need to keep in mind how much spotlight and screen time the players have. So for example, in Star Trek Congo, I have 5 players. And I do my best to set up scenes where either all the players can participate at once, or I break the scene up into different parts. So maybe 2 players are doing this scene and another 2 players are doing that scene. And the way that works out is it gives everybody a chance to talk as their character, advance plots, advance goals, but it also doesn't leave players constantly in the spotlight. It gives them sort of cooldown periods. But what you don't want to do, and again, this is kind of the little bit of advice here, one of the worst things you can do is do single RP moments. Now, I'll explain a little bit, and I know we're going off in a tangent here, but for a game like Dungeons & Dragons, or a game like, shall we say, Chromatic Crusaders, or a game like Star Trek Adventures, you may have people going off on their own to accomplish something that is for the good of the party, or the good of the away team, or there's some justifiable reason for them to break up from the rest of the party. What you don't want to do is have that one player have 20 to 30 minutes of just them. That's good to hear, Jewish Aurorian. I would look forward to that application. I will look for it in the future. But one of the worst things you can do is more or less give that player the spotlight for a constant time. Because what you're doing is, let's say you have 5 characters or 5 players. You have one player who has 20 minutes of the spotlight, but you have almost, quick math here, you have 80 minutes of people's time, because 4 times 20 people that aren't playing actively. You have 80 minutes of time that is being wasted there. And that's huge. You want to limit how much quote-unquote wasted time that happens, because if you don't, what you're going to get are people on their phones, people zoning out, people not paying attention, or otherwise missing crucial moments of role-playing because they're not involved. Why should they pay attention, kind of a thing. And part of that is on the player. The players shouldn't be on their phone. They shouldn't be, messing around on websites. They should be paying attention. But I'd be lying if even I as a player didn't, stray whenever it's not my turn. But I make it a point to pay attention because, I don't want to be caught off guard, kind of a thing. And that again goes back to session 0. Set the expectation that you're going to be rotating through people on a constant basis so that you're not having that temptation to go to your phone, or you're not having that temptation to get up and use the restroom mid-scene, kind of a thing. So that was the tangent I was going on, I think. So returning to the original sort of introductory scene there. So the players are going to talk amongst themselves. They're gonna get a feel for their characters and for each other in character. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a very basic combat encounter at the players in the Chromatic Crusaders game that is more or less meant to, that is more or less going to give them a chance to try out their character in a combat manner. Now, if your system that you're running doesn't really do combat, or it does something different, you don't need a combat encounter. Sometimes the best sessions are ones where you don't have combat encounters. But for games like Dungeons & Dragons, I feel like you should have at least one combat encounter a session, because that's kind of what Dungeons & Dragons does. But the point of this introductory adventure isn't for me to teach them, oh, well, you have a move and a minor, you can move X, Y, Z. It's not meant to be that. It's meant for them to test out the build or their character or the combo. It lets them test out what they thought was a good idea during character creation and see if they need to tweak their character sheet at all. And it's one of those things where, and this is another small tangent, for a session 1, a session 0, you should, in my opinion, as Game Master, allow players to adjust their sheet after the session is over, because it might be that they play through the first session and go, yeah, I don't really like what I've put points into. I think I would do better if I put points into this. But the key thing is you don't let them respec during the session. You let them respec after the session, so that they're not just metagaming and going, I need Arcana, well, let me just move some points around. No, you wanna let them do it after the session. And exactly, you want to let them kick the tires of their build and show off what makes them cool in combat. Exactly. So that's the purpose of introductory sort of scenes, is you want to set it up so that they get a feel for their character and the cool thing that they can do. Now, sometimes that's a little bit harder with larger groups, and you want to, again, be careful not to let someone be in the spotlight for too long. It's one thing to spend 1 to 2 minutes on a turn when you're first starting out, but if they're spending 5-10 minutes a combat turn or the cool roleplay thing, again, you have to keep in mind that the other players at the table are kind of waiting for their turn, so you want to be careful about that sort of thing. But yeah, so that's sort of my little bit of advice there, is to set up introductory scenes that empower the players to discover themselves in roleplay and in other play. Now, revisiting sort of the earlier comment I made about tailoring adventures to the player characters. If you're doing a gimmick campaign, like I will fully admit, the Chromatic Crusaders game, it's a gimmick campaign. I know everybody's going to be a Dragonborn. I know everybody's going to be evil. I know everybody's going to be worshipping Tiamat. So I have to figure out what makes each character individual, and I have to play to each of those individual strengths. Which I don't know yet. We haven't had session zeros, and I haven't finished applications, so that could go one of many different ways. But the key point I'm trying to make here is that I have to drill down, and I have to provide content in the story, in combat, all those sorts of things that allow the individual player characters to shine in a way that doesn't overshadow the other player characters. Let's use Star Trek for an example. So in Star Trek, and this is sort of a small soapbox, so I apologize for that. In Star Trek Adventures, the captain is going to be doing a lot of talking, unless there's away missions. And what you want to do is you want to empower the captain to set others up to succeed. But you want to do so in a way that isn't going to hamper them. And I'll explain a little bit. So, for example, what you want to do is you want to say, hey, Captain, your ship is going to be going to this region of space. You're going to find an anomaly there. You need to figure out how to deal with that anomaly. And what you want to do is then let that player, or let the party face, or whoever's the quote-unquote leader of the group, and believe it or not, every group has a leader, whether they want to admit it or not, but you want to go to that leader of the group, and you want to give them a little bit of a heads up on what's coming during a session. You don't want to spoil anything, you just want to give them a little heads up of the general content they can expect. And the leader, or the person you tell that to, is going to be able to enable other players much better than if you just threw that at them sort of out of the blue. And you were just like, oh yeah, so now here's the problem. All of you have to fix it. What do you do? That leads to awkward silences. That is one of the number one causes of awkward silences, is you throw the players into a situation that they weren't expecting, or that they have nothing to build on, and they sort of flounder and go, I don't know, what about you? And sometimes awkward silences is okay, but if you're streaming like I'm streaming, I do my best to limit that sort of thing, because dead air in streaming is dead air, and it doesn't lead to good viewership. But sort of to maybe steer us back to the original point, what I mean by tailoring the content to different individuals is, let's say, for example, that a player character in this Tiamat campaign, maybe that they're really sort of let's say they are a Casanova type. They're a ladies' man, or I don't know what the woman equivalent of that would be. My brain's kind of farting on me here, but whatever the case, they're a suave individual. You don't want to throw a brothel at them, but you want to maybe give them an opportunity to use their quote-unquote good social skills in a way that helps them advance the party's goals. So, for example, the suave character, Casanovette. There you go. I like it. Casanovette. I love it. But you want to give this person a chance to show off their social skills. And throw them a bone, not a boner. That's a good one. You get 50 points for that one. Good one. Good one. I like it. But you want to provide a moment where the person in question, the Casanovette or the Casanova, they have a chance to show off their skills. and they feel like they are contributing something meaningful to the rest of the group. By that same token, let's say that Casa non-binary, also a good one. I feel like, you know what, I'm liking this. Yeah, I like it. God, that killed my train of thought. Right, I remember now. So, Canadian has to be called out. Oh, Jewish Aurorian. I love it. So, let's take the example that a player has come to you with a backstory. And this is going to rightfully cause some of you to cringe, but a player comes to you with a backstory where his parents are alive. And unfortunately, the almost expectation on the game master is that, oh, well, I got to kidnap, kill, torture. I got to do something to their family because that's what GMs do. My hands are tied. I can't. You know, you gave me a family. I gotta do it. No, that's bad game masterings. Don't do that. Bad. Don't do that. What you want to do is if a player puts a significant other, somebody very important in their backstory, family, whatever it is, you want to use that in a plot hook style fashion, but not in a way that just trivializes or penalizes the backstory to begin with. Sort of furthering that point, I'll give an example here. Let's say player A says, oh yeah, you know, I have a family, I've got a wife and kids waiting me back at home. One of the worst things you can do as a game master is think, oh, well, I'll just capture the kids and try to ransom them off, or I'll do something to the wife. And no, again, don't do that. No. What you want to do is say, hey, you know that homestead you got back there in the countryside? Well, you know, maybe there's some orcs or, you know, some tieflings or, you know, some kind of, you know, malignant force going in that direction. Maybe you want to investigate that to make sure that the homestead stays safe. And the difference between these two examples, it might seem like a not an obvious example, but if you just torture, kill, maim, whatever, the player's connections, the player is going to feel very guarded and very reserved about offering you further plot hooks. And that's honestly a lot of trauma I see in a lot of players and GMs where they've been conditioned not to reveal anything about their character, either in character or out of character, because the game master has penalized them. They have more or less shat over everything they have provided the GM for quote-unquote the sake of the story. Whereas, if you simply say that Force X or Evil Force Y is going to potentially threaten your familiar relationships, the player is then motivated to go and explain to the rest of the party, hey, I have so-and-so back home, they may need my help, can you come help me? And that is far different than you going, hey, your family is being kept as prisoners by so-and-so group, and then it falls into, oh, well, now we have to do this because your family is in danger for sure. Or, you guys see what I'm saying? I feel like I'm maybe skirting around the point I'm trying to make here, but, I mean, does that make any sense? Maybe a little bit. And while I wait, I'm going to hydrate because Lord knows I need it. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where there's a lot of trauma in players these days, and it's not your job as game mastering to get them over that trauma, but actually, as Ms. here has just said, sometimes you can use backstory NPCs as plot hooks or complications. Maybe that long-lost relative that you thought was dead shows up and goes, hey, I got a heist, you want in? Or they show up and go, hey, player so-and-so, I need your help. I need this. And you... No, DSO has been taken over by the Undine. Lee, your family's in peril. Or worse. Oh, no, the Groundskeepers wouldn't do that. The Groundskeepers would keep DSO. Hi, Lovecraft, how you doing? But, you know, again, the general point I'm trying to make I'm not going to read that one, Jewish Rorian, but I laughed. The point I'm trying to make is you want to encourage the players to be creative, and you want to empower them with their backstory and with the information that they give you, which is going to lead to my next point, actually. And I think this is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of game masters, but I'm not going to mince words here. I'm going to be very direct and very clear. It is not your story. It is not your game. It is not your campaign, whatever you want to call it. It's the group's story. It is the group's campaign. It is the group's game. If you want to write a story as a game master, go write a book. That's pretty much the quickest way and the most blunt way I can say it. If you are concerned with telling a story and following that story, go write a book. Whereas, if you embrace the fact that tabletop role-playing is meant to be a collaborative storytelling experience, you will have a hell of a lot better time than railroading the players through your story. So, for example, let's say that you're going through a prepared adventure. And the prepared adventure is, prepared adventures by default are kind of on rails a little bit, but there's a difference between railroading the players to get through the module and railroading the players in a way that lets them still have agency. And I know that might seem odd to hear that you can railroad and still have player agency. I'll explain what I mean. So, one of the best tools you can do is you can sort of set up a story, and you don't actually flesh it out. You take very much a bullet point approach, where you say, all right, problem X is here, problem Y is here, the players need to get to Z by the end of the session. And actually, as Ms. has just said, that's one of the things I do, where I don't write conclusions for my games. I know the general idea of where they're going, but I deliberately do not require the players to do anything specific to solve the problem. It's very much, as Ms. has said, you want to set up the pieces, you want to set up the chessboard or the checkerboard to allow the players to come to their own conclusion, their own problem solving, their own sort of story, so that they have agency to direct where the story is going. Really good example, and since Lovecraft is here, I'm going to pick on Congo. Congo, this last session, and this is a small spoiler, but it's not a spoiler for next week, so that's all that matters. Congo came and approached a planet. They were making first contact. And then all of a sudden, they found a dreadnought sort of doomsday device bearing down on this planet. And I basically said, all right, you have X time to find a way to divert this doomsday weapon, or it's going to hit the planet. And I had maybe like 3 or 4 ideas of my own of how they could stop the doomsday weapon. And to be honest, the players, when they heard that and I gave them the information, they didn't do any of the 3 things I had planned. They immediately sort of went on a cowboy diplomacy style thing where, hey, Grey Matter, welcome back. The players sort of went with a very risky sort of infiltration mission. They went with boosting the shields to block the explosion. You know, it was something they came up with on their own. It was, as Lovecraft puts it, the captain allowed everyone to contribute and give suggestions. And again, that's a good thing. It's not your story, it's everyone's story. And by doing that, the players in Congo, based on their actions, have set themselves up for a very, very interesting next session, which I'm not going to spoil. If you want to know why it's interesting, go watch the recent Congo episode. But the original point I'm trying to make here is that you as the game master should not be forcing your plot onto the players. You should be allowing the players to find their own reason to advance the plot. Let's take the recent Fallout game, for example. So, in the most recent Motley Heights, I don't know why I had trouble remembering that. Actually, yes, Lovecraft, I did touch on that a little bit earlier. I don't know if you were here for it, but it is kind of your job to facilitate the other players if you're the group leader. Yes, exactly. But how do I put this? So for Motley Heights, for those who don't know, Motley Heights is my Fallout 2D20 campaign. It's on Mondays. We're taking a small break because Profess Hex or Doc Worm has actual like real life theater things going on. So we're going to be doing just a Game Master roundtable just chatting thing during its normal time slot until he's through that. But more to the point. So it's a Fallout game, which is very much an open world, very much a sandbox game. And you can probably tell just looking at the sessions, the ones where I was like, hey, you guys are going golfing today. Or, hey, you guys are going to be checking out X today. And yes, Gray Matter, I am having a GM roundtable. It'll be this Monday at 9 p.m. So you want to tune in then. Wink, wink, wink. But you can tell there are times when I tell the Fallout group, is there a sign up for it? Actually, no, there isn't going to be a sign up. It is going to be just between myself and the other Monday players. So Wolf's going to be there. Aaron's going to be there. Panorama Tint's going to be there. Datig, you may know him. And then Profess Hex is going to drop in as he can. But we will have chat up. Like, we'll just have pretty much this screen right here that you're on right now with just a Discord overlay for the other players. It'll be EDT, 9 p.m. EDT or 6 p.m. Pacific is when that'll be. GMT is like 1 in the morning. So, sorry, GMT folks. What was I saying? Right. So you can tell that there's episodes in Motley Heights where I'm like, hey guys, I want to explore X today. And it's one of those things where, the players, 9 times out of 10, if you ask the players like, hey, can we play this today? The players are going to be like, yeah, that's okay. And every once in a while, you'll even get a, yeah, I'm cool with doing that, but I want to do X first. Or, hey, I want to go talk to NPC first. Or, hey, I want to go accomplish this or work on a project sort of a thing. And that's a good thing. Again, it gives the players agency, lets them decide what they do. But you still go into a session with a general game plan of, okay, I expect to be doing this quest or this plot this session. Now, some game masters may take that advice and go, well, that's just railroading with extra steps. In a way, yes, it is railroading with extra steps. But there's a very subtle but important difference in just throwing it at the players and ramming them through a plot and allowing the players to discover it on their own. Again, using Motley Heights as an example. They woke up the Mars automaton, the Mars AI. They finally built the Mars AI body, and the Mars AI said, hey, I want to go mess with the Institute. And the players were like, why the hell should we go mess with the Institute? So the NPC in question started giving reasons. But at the end of the day, I was fully prepared for the players to go, no, we don't want to check that out. And that would have been fine. I had another adventure prepared. But it's one of those things where you want to let the players discover their own reason for going with the plot or their own reason for being with the group. Because if they don't have a reason with being with the group or reason to go through whatever plot you're trying to do or whatever story you're trying to do, they're not going to contribute as a player, and they're not going to have fun as a player because they have no reason to be invested. So why should they care? As Jude put it, it's kind of like saying, hey, want to go to the zoo and see what happens? I mean, you already know what's going to be at a zoo. You're going to see animals in cages or animals in enclosures. It's not going to change what the animals are, but you still can have a fun time at the zoo, if that makes any sense. So, in a larger nebulous sense, I guess what I'm trying to point out here is don't go in with a fully fleshed out story that has to have certain things happen. Example, one of the worst things you can do for a D&D group is give them a puzzle. Now I know some of you are like, well wait, ELH, puzzles are like a staple of D&D. Why shouldn't I give the players a puzzle? Because 9 times out of 10, the puzzles rely on meta knowledge and or the players doing something and guessing what the GM is thinking. It sucks as a player. don't do it. It removes agency from the players that says, hey, solve this puzzle or you don't advance. Yeah, that's a save or suck situation. Don't do it. And I'll talk about save or suck in a moment. But what you probably want to do instead, as Gray Matter has touched on here and as others have touched on in chat, what you want to do is come in to... you kind of want to come into a session with bullet points rather than a full story. You want to come in with major story beats that says, okay, in this scene, I want X present, I want Y to happen, maybe here's a few outcomes. You don't want to specifically, again, set in stone what has to happen. Now, to touch on what Ms. has just said a little bit here, because maybe I'll be a little bit more fair to puzzles. In a real-life game, puzzles are good, because puzzles are one of those things where if you're in a real-life table, you can give the person that's not in the spotlight, you can give them a piece of paper with a puzzle on it, and they can work on it, and they can solve it in real time. You can sort of do that in an online game, but it doesn't work as well. There's just something to be said with having a physical component to a puzzle as opposed to a digital one. And I don't really have a good way of explaining that further, other than it just feels different, or at least it always has to me, both as a player and a GM. So it's one of those things where puzzles are fun every now and again, but don't put anything important behind them. Don't put any sort of mandatory information behind a puzzle, because, and I guess this is also sort of speaking to the railroading part, you don't want to have the players save or suck. You don't want to have the players either they accomplish this really difficult thing or they don't get the information. And this is sort of speaking to the concept of failing forward. You want the players to get base information. So let's say, for example, let's say that you have a report. Let's use Star Trek as an example. I think that'll be the best way to go about this. Let's say that the players have entered into a new star system and they are doing a basic sensor scan. So they're just scanning the new star system, seeing what's out there. Well, base information you want to give them. How many planets are there? Are there any other starships in the area? Are there any anomalies in the area? Now, that's base success, so even if they fail, you give them basic information. If they succeed, or just barely pass, or whatever metric your system you're using uses, if they succeed, you give them more details. Maybe that they're detecting that the anomaly on the third planet is somehow a repeating signal, or maybe there's signs that there's cloaked vessels in the system. You know, you add in little bits of tidbits that hint at the greater picture, but don't give away the grand scheme of things. But you give the players little hints, you give the players little rewards for succeeding, but again, you don't take away the basic information. Now, of course, if they really knock it out of the park and they get like 6-7 successes, or, you know, they get so many successes that it's unreal, you also don't want to just reveal that there's cloaked ships in the areas, or that there's like 6 dozen traps in specific squares, but maybe you want to say, you know what, it would be good for you to maybe look into that a little bit more, maybe hint further that there's traps, or hint further that there's cloaked vessels. You see what I'm saying? It's something where you more or less want to facilitate the fact that the players could fail a roll, but might not get the full picture. Because again, one of the worst things you can do, and what will bring a game to a screeching halt, is you put a crucial bit of information, especially in an investigation game like Call of Cthulhu. You put an important book or an important piece of paper at a certain location or on a certain NPC, and if the players never get through the combat encounter to get to the book or the NPC, or if the NPC dies unexpectedly, you're sort of sitting there as the GM going, how do I get the players this information? And you need to prepare for that. You need it, again, it needs to be one of those things where you are okay with getting the players the crucial information that allows them to continue the grander story at large. Because again, it's not your story, it's everybody's story. So hopefully that point makes sense. Hopefully. The thing about puzzles and tabletop role-playing games is something you actually dislike as a TTRPG. It already has inherent player involvement in the game space. Puzzle-esque mini-games are used in the digital games to provide player interaction in the game space. That is true. That is true. It is one of those things where it works in a video game, but it does not work as well in the physical medium. Let's see. In fairness, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition does explicitly have mechanics for getting players the clues if they fail the necessary encounters so they're not locked out. Yes, and again, unless this is like some major uber point that, let's use Cthulhu for example. If the players don't know X, Cthulhu will be summoned. Yeah, they need to know that. Don't lock them out of that. But if it's something minor like, oh, yeah, that NPC that you've been chummy and buds with the entire time, they might be stabbing you in the back, and here's proof that they're doing that. The players don't need that information, but it would be nice for them to have. You sort of see the difference there? It's a subtle difference, but it's a difference all the same. But yeah, it's one of those things where you want to be prepared to get the players important information multiple different ways. And this now goes into the topic of quantum ogres. Now, I'm pretty sure I've talked about quantum ogres on the stream before, so my apologies for those who have heard the quantum ogre theory or people who know the quantum ogre theory already. But for the GMs out there who don't know, or the, perspective, or for the prospective, is that the right word? The new GMs out there is what I'm getting at. Quantum ogres is basically the theory that no matter what the players do, that they will encounter the quantum ogre. Now, the quantum ogre isn't in a specified point. The quantum ogre could be anywhere in a scene. It could be anywhere, any scene they could show up. But as Grey Matter has just said here, the quantum ogre doesn't have to be an ogre itself. It can literally be anything. So, for example, maybe in a Star Trek game, maybe an important alien vessel shows up in system. Well, maybe that vessel doesn't show up until second act, or it doesn't sort of show up until maybe the end. But it's one of those things where no matter what the players do, the quantum ogre shows up, and the players have to deal with the quantum ogre. And sort of, it takes a little bit of skill and a little bit of improv skill to pull it off, but I guarantee you, the better you are at quantum ogering, the more you're going to have fun preparing for sessions as a game master. That's the Gumshoe system in a nutshell. You don't have to get out of a scene without getting the relevant plot fits and move the story forward. I have heard good things about Gumshoe. I have been meaning to take a look at Gumshoe. I might do that this weekend. But it's one of those things where some people kind of look at quantum ogres and they go, well, again, ELH, that's just game mastering, or that's just railroading with extra steps. Yes, it is railroading in a sense, because no matter what the players do, they will be having to deal with the quantum ogre. But the players don't know that. I mean, unless you literally are telling the players, hey, quantum ogre time. Players have no idea that the quantum ogre is even coming, and that's the beauty of it. Your railroad tracks, quote unquote, are ones that the players set for themselves, and you just sort of throw the quantum ogre at a dramatically appropriate time. So it's railroading in a sense that you are saying that X will happen, but you're doing it in such a way that lets the players have agency. And it's not just oh, you went to this location, ogres are there. It's, oh, you went to this location and you did Y, and you proceeded past that location. Oh, look at this, now there's a new quantum ogre on the field, what do you do? For example, in all my games, I have little space-time shenanigans events possible depending on if the players did something that would trigger it. As for plot, you usually have quantum consequences. Fair enough, that is a fair way to go about it. Where the quantum ogres have quantum consequences. Where the consequences aren't set in stone, but there are certain times where certain actions will result in certain consequences. Something like, if the players ignore the plot hook and go in the opposite direction of plot, you need to decide what they find, like a group of bandits, or a lost old lady, or the main plot because you moved it over there. Yes. So, let's say, for example, that you're in a D&D group and You say, hey, X is terrorizing the town. We could use your help. And the players go, nah, not feeling it, man. We're just gonna go somewhere else. We're gonna go over to the other town. Sorry about your wolf problem. And then you as the GM are like, what do I do? Well, what you do in that instance is, if you really, really, really want the wolf problem to be the thing, you make it so the wolves attack the players in a way that lets them think the town is, seriously in danger, or that this is a bigger problem. But what you can do is you can take the threat of the wolves and you can retool it into a different encounter for them on the road as they travel to their new location. And this is, again, the concept of quantum ogres, where you prepare certain little vignettes and little scenes and little combat encounters and other encounters, but you do it in a way that you can move them around in a fluid fashion, and it's not wholly dependent on the player action. Because that way, again, the players are going to add to the story in their own way. And you want to be flexible as a GM to, prepare some little things. Like, you want to prepare a few quantum ogres, and you want to prepare a bare bones bullet point of where you want to go in a session. But the players should be the driving force here. It shouldn't be the game master. The game master, and this is something that I've said on stream, I think, a few times. I always feel bad as a game master when I have to tell players to stop the current scene or stop role playing because we have to get something done. But, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I'll continue the train of thought. If you're pressed for time, or if you're a streamed game, or maybe it's one of those things where you only have 3 hours to play and you need to finish by 3 hours, there's nothing inherently wrong with saying, all right, hey guys, you've been doing Camp RP for the past 45 minutes. I expect the session to take 2.5 hours to finish. Can we, move to the next scene? There's nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong where, hell, if that's what you want to do for your session, let the players do Camp RP for 3 hours. But it's one of those things where you still should provide the players the choice to advance the plot, or the choice to continue their quest, mission, whatever. And maybe sometimes, hey, maybe you introduce the quantum consequence that if they spend 6 hours doing Camp RP, that while they were Camp RPing, bad guy X did something to one of their backstory. Well, maybe not to their backstory, maybe to one of their favorite towns or something. So, it's one of those things where it's going to take practice. It's going to take practice for you to do it. It's going to take practice for you to learn how to quantum ogre effectively. But again, as long as you're not telling the players what a quantum ogre is and when you're doing it, you'll be surprised how oftentimes players will come to you and be like, that was amazing when you dropped those ogres on us. That was really cinematic. I'm glad you planned that out. Was that always planned? GM tip number 5. Yes, you tell them yes, you lie through your teeth, and you say, yep, we did that, totally planned, Never, ever tell them you're quantum ogering, which I know I'm violating by the fact I'm telling you I quantum ogre, but do as I say, not as I do. You get the point. Also, Grey Matter, I mean, honestly, if we can find a time that would work, I'd love to sample your game mastering style. But really, it's when it comes to a streamed game, this is going off on a tangent, but when it comes to a streamed game, Rule 6, you do not talk about quantum ogre. Yeah. Rule 7, you do not talk about quantum ogre. It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about Fight Club. Oh, Lord. But for a stream game, and yeah, Ray, the next time someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. Yep. And I guess I'll sort of wrap that point up, and we'll talk a little bit about streaming games, because I feel like a lot of people, especially these days, want to try their hand at streaming. So, a few bits of advice on the GM side of streaming games. And this might be just also kind of a little bit of just streaming advice in general. So let me know if I get too off topic. But this sort of plays back to what I said earlier about scheduling. For a streamed game, it is vital that you start on time, that you end within reason, based on the block of time that you've set out for your players, and you want to do it consistently. Because if you don't have consistency, you're not having standard stream length, or you're not, again, being consistent, players and viewers are not going to tune in. They're not going to stick with you because you're basically doing guerrilla streaming, and it doesn't work out that well. I mean, that's, for example, that's why I do 10-minute timers, or why I start the streams 10 minutes early, because not only does it let people roll in, but it also lets me start on time or deal with any tech issues before the real thing starts. So I guess sort of my next point is meet early. Like, don't just meet 10 minutes before the session. Meet like 30 to 40 minutes before the session with the group, so you can figure out tech issues, so you can test the technology, so that when you go live on the big screen, you're not floundering around going, oh, Discord broke, or oh, map tools broke. You know, test your tech. Your tech will fail. You want to catch it early. You don't want it to be one of those things where you spend 20 minutes on stream trying to fix it. And yeah, Grey Man, I know it's like you are not wanting to be a streamer specifically, but even as like a guest GM, these are things you have to keep in mind as a streamer before you allow a guest GM on your channel. Not only do you have to vet the GM in question, you have to make sure that it is a experience that is consistent, on time, and will be enjoyable for your viewer base. Which sort of leads into a small extra point I have here. It's okay to stream when other people are streaming. For example, if you want to stream Thursday night at 9 p.m. till midnight Eastern time, do it. I mean, hell, if you have players for it, do it. But what you don't want to do, and I'm using this as a specific example, what you don't want to do is go, oh, we can't play Thursday because Critical Role is airing Thursday nights at 10 Eastern, so that means we'll never get any viewers. No. The reason you're not getting any viewers is because you're not being consistent, on time, and compelling in forms of content. Trust me, I could go on a whole length about Critical Role, but I won't. But it's one of those things where the moment you start comparing yourselves to other streams, or to other streams that aren't necessarily... Let me start that sentence over. The moment you start comparing yourself to other streamers or to other streamed games that run at the same time as you is the moment you enter into a self-defeating mindset. You should stream because you want to stream, and you should be running the game because you want to run the game. You shouldn't be running it to, oh, I want to take the viewers from Critical Role, or, oh, I want to take the viewers from Arcadum. No, don't do that. That is bad. Don't do that. Don't do that at all. And it's one of those other things where, as people are saying in chat, sometimes people aren't going to like Critical Role. Sometimes they're not going to like Arcadum. Sometimes they're not going to like Koibu, and they're not going to like Destiny. They're going to want to come to you because you're new and you're different, or you're like me and you're crazy and you have a virtual avatar that everybody says doesn't match up with your voice. Yeah, I said the loud part. I said the quiet part out loud. Yeah, yeah, good job, me. Good job. Okay, gonna move on. Point I'm trying to make here is, yeah, I do remember your rant on that Gray Matter. I do. Point I'm trying to make: stream because you want to, run the game because you want to, not because you're trying to make numbers or that you're trying to make bits or subs. Do it because you want to. Which I fully admit. That's why we didn't do this talk on Wednesday at the normal frank discussion time. I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't really happy with myself. I wasn't in a good mood. And I think it was better that I delayed it till today, because I mean, hell, we've been going for almost an hour 30 minutes, and as far as I can tell, you all are involved, so plus in my book. But yeah, it's a thing. Yeah, you know, Miz, it's one of those things where you shouldn't... and this is maybe a rant on VTubing. VTubing is inherently biased towards the female streamers or the female presenting streamers. But male streamers using female avatars, or male people or male presenting using male avatars, it's not a bad thing. I just wish more people didn't see it as quote unquote a debuff, or because they want clout. Almost what Quartermain has just said. VTube, stream, write, do it because you want to, not because you want it. You want numbers. Because the moment you start chasing numbers is the moment you're going to be a very unhappy streamer, game master, writer, etc., etc., etc. Like, numbers are nice, don't get me wrong. Numbers are very nice. Subs are nice, bits are nice, follows, subs, whatever. All very nice things. But it shouldn't be the end all. It shouldn't be the metrics by which you judge success on. Which, small note before I go off on this rant. Yes, so let's talk about stuff moving forward. So next Monday, as I said, we're doing the little GM roundtable with Darewolf, with Panorama Tint, or you know him as Dotig, and with Profess Hex, or you know him as Dr. Worm. We're doing that on Mondays for 2 weeks. Then on the 19th, we're back to streaming Motley Heights Season 2. Tuesdays, the Congo game is going to have its season finale next Tuesday. And then, depending on how the group's feeling, we might take a week off, or we might just simply go straight into Season 3. We'll see what the group's feeling. But Wednesdays, so... And this isn't a knock on Yuma. I don't want anybody to think I'm pew-pewing Yuma here. But basically, Yuma's going through some rough stuff. I'm not going to go into details. Yuma needs time. So we've temporarily put or maybe not temporarily, we've put the Pokemon game on Wednesdays on an indefinite hiatus. That way, whenever Yuma is in a good place and she can confidently come into a session without having to worry about her schedule, we'll resume the Pokemon game. And again, we all should hope that Yuma's schedule gets better and that her mental state improves, and we all wish her very well. But that's why the Pokemon game is not going to be on the channel for a while, simply because Yuma needs her time. So we're going to give Yuma her time, and might be back, it might not. Either way, we had fun running it, and that's what matters. Now, what's going to happen on Wednesdays instead of the Pokemon game is I'm going to be doing quote-unquote frank discussions. And like my very first one, the very first frank discussion was about depression. This one was about game mastering. The next one, next Wednesday, is going to be about happiness in general. And there's going to be crosstalk, and there's going to be some repeated points between all the frank discussions I do. But my main goal is to provide a space that not only am I streaming, something that isn't tabletop role-playing, but also lets me interact with you guys as viewers, because I don't really get to do that when I'm doing tabletop role-playing. I don't really have the way to, talk with you guys or bounce off chat, except in very few moments when, players are rolling dice or players are, on break. There's not really a chance for me to interact with you guys. Also, welcome, Xanderfell84. You sort of missed it, kind of. We're sort of wrapping up, but I'm happy that you made it all the same. Definitely recommend checking out the VOD of this, which is another thing. The VOD for both the depression talk and this talk, I will put up on YouTube probably Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. It'll be up Sunday. And it'll be probably the first time I do long-form VTubing content on that channel. So if you want to go back and you watch the VOD, if I said anything you want to write down, which, hey, I mean, if you did, accomplished my goal. But it's one of those things where I want to enable people to find the VODs in an easy way. And I want it to be something where... how do I put this? I've been told many times by people I've wanted to collab with, or people that have wanted to collab with me, that I come across as very intimidating, which, you know, when I first heard that, I was like, wait, hold on, hold on, intimidating me? Wait a second, intimidating? That can't be right. No, that can't be right. And so it was one of those things where I sort of, you know, I looked back at that and I was like, am I intimidating? Am I personable? And it came back and I was like, you know what? You know, the people are right. You know, I'm not really giving people a chance to get to know me or Iggy here or Ember or Enteka. You know, it's one of those things where not really given a way to players to connect with me outside of my game mastering. So that's why we're doing Wednesday things. Also, Xanderfell, it's one of those things where I don't like talking into the void. Not that I'm talking into a void, but I don't like talking to the, you know, by myself for like 2 hours. My limit's about 2 hours straight. So I know my streams are on the shorter side, but I find they're more digestible that way. Not a good or bad thing. It's just easier for people to digest them. But yeah, so that's what we're doing Wednesdays. Thursdays, we're not doing anything Thursdays. That's one of my definite off days. Fridays, I might spin something up. I'm not 100% sure. I kind of have to see how things shake out. But again, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m., starting the 17th or the 24th, either the 17th or the 24th. That's going to be the Not Power Rangers Chromatic Crusader game, the All Evil campaign I've been talking about. And then, what else? And then the Sunday Kasumi game of Star Trek. That will be starting either the 11th or the 18th. So that'll be at 9 p.m. on Sunday. Now, if those all go well, that'll bring me back up to 4 streamed games and one just chatting stream with you all on Wednesdays. So I'll either probably spin another game up, or I'll probably spin up an actual video gaming thing, so that, again, I'm VTubing and not game mastering, as I put it. And yeah, Xanderfell, that's kind of, I guess that's a good way to put it. That people think that you're greater than you really are, or that you're somehow beneath this person you're trying to get in contact with. And also, as Grey Matter says, it's also sort of a starstruck scenario where it's like, oh my god, I've been following this guy for who knows how long, and oh my god, he's talking to me, what do I do? I mean, I understand it. I mean, hell, I do that with a few other people in the community. But, and that's kind of where I was going with this, Xanderfell. Sometimes it means that you think the other person is a threat. Not going to name names, not going to give specific examples, but I've been in the VTuber community long enough to get to know many, many different people. And let's just say that it's a very common mindset among certain VTubers to see each other as threats rather than people that are friends or people you can collab with. I wish it was something that wasn't the case, but people are going to be people whether or not there's a virtual avatar involved or not. But yeah, that might be a whole can of worms we want to avoid, because I don't want to get anyone in trouble and I don't want to put anybody on blast. But yeah, it's definitely more of a personal, yeah, exactly, Xanderfell. It's definitely more personal opinion than it is actual fact. So yeah, I try not to go too hard into the bad vibes, or at least not unannounced anyway. So a Power Rangers Chromatic Dragon mashup implies the existence of a Chromatic Dragon other than the big five, so that you can have a 6th Ranger reveal. Quiet, Miss Roy! Shush! Shush, 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 shush! They cannot hear you! Shush! Shush! Dear Wolf's here! Shush! I need to get better at that toggle. I deliberately made that toggle. I'm trying to get better at using it. I've got a few toggles. Obviously I've got the numbers thing, and I've got the camera zoom in, but I'm trying to be a little bit more active. Trying to be a little bit more responsive with my technology. Yeah, it's a thing. Which, nah, I'll leave that there. I've been in too many contract positions where your livelihood could easily be destroyed by another person's success or treachery. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where... Actually, Xanderfell, I think, puts it better than I could, really. Where it is one of those things where you can only do so much to change what other people think of you, or what people are going to do around you, or things that will affect you. You only have but so much influence over that. And at a certain point, you sort of have to look around and going, yeah, I really can't worry about this, or I can't change anything about this, so kind of just have to accept whatever comes down the road, which sometimes rightfully sucks. But at the same time, it's also one of those things where it can be very freeing, not having to worry all the time about what is coming down the road. Not to say that worrying isn't a bad thing, but I'll probably talk more about this on the happiness stream this coming Wednesday, but the less you worry, the more happy you can be at the end of the day. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, especially when it comes to VTubing and collabs and streaming in general, that you're gonna make enemies, even if you didn't intend to. You're gonna run into people you don't like, and vice versa, and you just sort of have to accept it. You just have to sort of accept that that's out of your control. And kind of, again, as Xanderfell puts it, worry about what you can control and not what you can't. Which might seem simple, obvious advice, but hey, I mean, sometimes the best advice is the most obvious and simple. That's what I'd say on that. Alright, let me look at my notes here. Let me see, did I hit all the GM points before I completely go off tangent here? And we talked about that. We talked about that. Oh. Okay. So one more thing on the game mastering front before we sort of open this up to true open discussion. As a game master, and maybe this actually kind of ties into what we were just talking about. As a game master, as a streamer, as whatever you want to be, you don't improve unless somebody gives you feedback. And whether that's good feedback or bad feedback, you need feedback in order to improve at your craft. So something I found that works extremely, extremely well on the game mastering front is to open up an anonymous feedback form. Now, this is very similar to making a player application. You just go into Google Drive, you fire up a Google form, and you have a single question that says, what is your feedback, good or bad, or something along those lines. And you set it to be the paragraph option so that players can, or people, or viewers, or whoever comes to this forum can write an essay if they want to write an essay on what you're doing good, what you're doing bad, etc., etc. The ability to give anonymous feedback is enough that many people will actually come out of the woodwork and stop being lurkers to give you feedback, to give you criticism, whether it's in good faith or bad faith. You will get feedback. And again, you need feedback to improve. So it's one of those things where it might seem a very simple thing to have an anonymous feedback form, but it works. Like, it has honestly saved several of my games in the past because somebody brought an issue to my attention that I wasn't seeing from my GM chair. I just wasn't seeing it. So it's something where if you're a game master, whether you're online or real life, I'd recommend setting up an anonymous feedback form and letting your players know where to find it. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to go witch hunting to find your players. Speaking of players, hi, Chubby Kobold. Hi. What you don't want to do is have an anonymous feedback form and then go hunting for who wrote what, because that sort of defeats the point of it being an anonymous feedback form. But you also want to have the expectation that your door is open as a game master, that the players can approach you, that they shouldn't be intimidated, that they can come to you with a problem and go, yeah, hey, I'm feeling this about this, or this about this person. What do you think? What can we do? Having just the ability to have an open door can save games. It really can. And let's see, my philosophy, everything and everyone is a lesson. You are learning something new all the time, and even the bad can help you grow and be knowledgeable about what may or may not happen. And if you repeat the lesson, then you simply may not have learned what the lesson is yet. It's a very nice way to put that. I like that a lot. I might steal that. I'm not gonna lie, good GM steals, stealing that. Totally stealing that. Oh, I guess that is sort of my final bit of GM advice. Steal. Like, no joke, steal from everything. Steal from books, steal from movies, steal from your favorite anime series, steal from other games, steal from other GMs. Steal what you think would be good for your game. Now, if you want to be good about it, set the light gray walkers on your players. Oh, Lord. What you want to do is you want to give credit where it's due. Like, obviously, it's one of those things where, let's say, for example, I'm trying to think of a general example so I don't have to name any names. Yeah, I think we'll just keep it vague. You want to steal what works, and what works is going to be different for every. It's going to be different for every table. Where maybe you look, as Great Matter just said, maybe you look at ELH's Prepared Adventure, and maybe you just don't like the way the plot's unfolding in the Prepared Adventure, or maybe the adventure gives you an idea, but you want to run a different angle to it. Steal it. Like, no joke, just steal it and run with what you think would be good for your table. Because at the end of the day, I think there's sort of an expectation that the players are there to have fun, and if you're stealing something that has some way contributed to the game being fun, then there's no shame in that. Like, there's no shame in admitting, oh yeah, I stole that dragon encounter from Chubby Kobold, or hey, I stole so-and-so from this other GM, or hey, I read this book recently and I stole that plot from here. There's no shame in that. Honestly, that's the best way you can improve as a game master in terms of creativity, is by learning how to steal and reflavoring it in a way that works for your table. I've seen a horror story where the GM basically made the players watch the plot of Black Clover and railroaded them hard. And the big grand moment went to the NPC insert of the main character from the anime. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where there are definitely different ways that you can sort of twist player expectations in that way. For example, maybe we'll use Black Clover as an example here. If I remember the movie correctly, the whole movie's about this sort of unseen monster that you never see, and it's always blowing things up around the viewer. Well, maybe what we see is from the big scary monsters side of things. Maybe we see it from a different angle, or maybe we explore how that monster came to be in the first place. It's one of those things where you can borrow wholesale full elements from different media and flavor it in a different light, and it's suddenly a novel concept. I mean, direct example, I saw Power Rangers, I saw Tiamat, and I was like, okay, if I take concept A, concept B, and I sort of smush them together, and oh look at that, I've made Power Rangers in D&D. Huh. Should I run this? Yes, other me, you should run this. Well, thanks, other me. And then you end up doing what I do, and you stay up till 5 a.m. making player applications, and yeah. And Xanderfeld does nail it. One of the biggest challenges is indeed figuring out why the big bad is doing something. If you can figure that out, how the players get from point A to point B with the big bad, let them figure that out. Again, it's a collaborative story. You'll get there one way or another. Oh, Lord. Oh, I'm thinking of a different Black Clover then. I was thinking of the movie. You know what? Now I'm curious. Let me look that up real quick. I'm looking for the, Yeah, Xanderfell, definitely would encourage you joining the Discord. Let me drop the Discord command. There you go. There's the link if you need it. Just drop it in general. Be happy to help you out best I can. What was... Because I know I'm going insane. I swear I'm going insane here. I'm not finding it on Google. So the black clover I know was, or maybe it was just clover. You know, maybe it is just clover. Hold on. Is it just clover? Yes, that's what it is. It is just clover. That's what it is. It isn't black clover. It's just clover. That's what I'm thinking it is. Cloverfield. That's what it is. You got it. That's exactly what I was looking for. That's why we were confused. There we go. You stole the dune worms and you used the D&D species as cultures in STA. I mean, honestly, again, steal what works. It's good. Your guardsman guild is based on Judge Dredd. It's a good example. It really is. Now, important question, Gray Matter. Are we talking like comic book Dredd? Are we talking Stallone Dredd? Are we talking new Dredd? Because they're all sort of different. I mean, base character is the same, but if you've looked at all three of those mediums, you know that Dredd is different in each of them. The law. Yeah. If Wolf was still here, he'd give us his best the law. Oh, the next adventure you're about to run is going to have Mr. Rogers as the ship's counselor. Yes, please. Oh, Lord. And this is going to reveal a little bit. In every campaign I've ever run, there is always a Mr. Rogers, there is always a Bob Ross, and there is always an Ignitrix. So some people find Ignitrix more than anybody else, because if you're playing Star Trek Adventures, well, I kind of throw her in your face. She's your fleet admiral. Sucks to be you. Or not. I like to think she's a cool fleet master, but hey, what do I know? Or fleet admiral, but what do I know? Wolf is dead? No, I think it's 1:40 a.m. for Wolf, and he needs to be up at 8 a.m., so probably why he's not here. Xanderfeld, just throw it in general. Throw it in general chat, and I'll get to it after the stream. And, it definitely is something where I'd be happy to help. But no, the Bob Ross and Mr. Rogers in High Water. Let's just say that if you didn't go so hard with APEP that you tried to connect with some of the other settlements that were on the planet, you would have run into Mr. Rogers. Now, where Bob Ross was and all that, no, I'm going to keep that one to myself. But your hint is he's in another meta vault, is what I'll say on that. But yeah. And yeah, like, don't even feel bad about stealing from Mercer. Like, I think Mercer himself has said that he cares more about the fact that, people are playing the game than he does about people trying to be him. So don't feel bad about, stealing from another game master. It's not a bad thing. Your grandfather was an army vet and at Pearl Harbor, and you have him as a guardsman in every game. Nice. Very, very good tribute. In my games, there are insert characters for every player, but that is because my worlds are all connected and the players are literal gods in them. Nice choice. I see where you're going with that. STA game I play in has the cast of Galaxy Quest as supporting characters. By Grabthaw's hammer, you will be avenged. Oh God, I need to rewatch Galaxy Quest. I need to just sit down and. Oh God, you know what? I think that's what I'm gonna do after the stream. Is I'm gonna watch Galaxy Quest again because the nostalgia's coming to me. I know what I'm doing next. And yeah, Bubble Lover, Mercer really does hate the Mercer effect. Like, I think he's gone on to say many times that he wishes it wasn't a thing. It's an unfortunate side effect. Something gets popular, people try to emulate the popular thing, and, you start getting into the comparison, and it's no bueno all the way around. Ah, Quincy Taggart is part of the chain of command. Very nice. Very nice. Someone got really annoyed at a player for having a dog companion until you found out that the person was using the dog companion as a way to cope for losing his in real life dog. Ah, okay. So, I swear this is the last thing I'll say about game mastering, but it's also very important, and I'm glad we brought this up. Sometimes players are going to come to your table, and they're going to be going through trauma. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one, loss of family, the loss of a pet. Maybe they're having a hard time at work. Maybe they just want to explore being someone that isn't them. Your job as game master isn't to be their therapist, but it is your job as game master to do your best to let them have the type of fun they're coming to your table for. So, for example, if someone, using this dog as an example, if someone has lost their dog recently, you want to avoid anything that shows the killing of canines. No wolves, no dogs, anything of that. You also don't want to go too hard into the dogs, where you don't want to have dogs just randomly come up and, lick the player character, be all friendly, dog-like. As Bubble Lubber actually beats me to my own point, you want to give the players a safe environment where they can explore their feelings and their trauma in a healthy way that isn't disruptive. And full disclaimer here, sometimes players are going to be disruptive about it, and it's okay for you to pull them aside and be like, hey, are you going through something rough? Can you maybe not bring it to the table, kind of a thing? But in general, you don't know what other people are coming to your table, what's going on in their life, and you want to be accommodating of that. You want to make sure that the people who come to your table are there because they feel safe and that they're not going to have to regret anything that they say at your table. Yeah, that's what I would say. All right, let's see. Had an idea for Fallout where there are no NPCs to talk to. They all just have to talk to each other. Perhaps a missile silo complex / survival bunker. Lots of ghouls. That could work. And yeah, Genesis, I would not be surprised if another GM said the same thing, because a lot of the advice game masters like me give out, I mean, we all pretty much say the same thing at the end of the day. It's just saying it in a way that gets it to stick in people's heads, or it's catching someone new with our rants. So that's why we keep saying the things we do. Yep, Xanderfell, I see the post. I will get back to you after the stream. Played in a Demon Descent game where I played a demon that fell because he wanted to save the life as a child. Accidentally ended up being depressed to play the character because he was homeless, and you were homeless at the time. Things became too real. And that's another thing. And I guess this is another GM point, but screw it. I'm tired of saying it's the last point. It's important that you, as the game master, are having fun. And if you are not having fun as the game master, it's going to show. And it's one of those things where you need to have fun as much as the players are having fun. And if you're not, either take steps to correct it, or maybe, and there's no shame in doing this, maybe realize game mastering isn't what you need to have in your life right now. I'm not saying you can't be a GM. What I am saying is reevaluate why you're not feeling happy about a game, and don't be afraid to admit that, hey, maybe this just isn't the right time for me to be game mastering. No shame in that. Absolutely no shame in that. All right. So with that, we are coming up on 2 hours here. So this is where I actually am going to end the YouTube recording. But Twitch, stick around because we're going to raid somebody. As for that, YouTube, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.